Hey, how's it going? My name's Nat. Coming up on Newsbreak. Vaccines are coming for more Aussie kids. Kale weighs in on the AFL All-Australian team. And these animals actually weigh in at London Zoo. But before we get started, why don't you hit subscribe? First up, Aussie kids might soon be able to get the COVID-19 vaccine. Australia's vaccine advisors say the Pfizer jab is safe and effective for kids aged 12 to 15. Liv explains.
It's kind of hard to believe that life used to look a lot more like this. Not that long ago. The pandemic has changed things a lot. And it's not going anywhere. Today, New South Wales announced more than 800 new cases. But the federal government says despite what's going on, it wants to see life start going back to normal.
Now, it's like that movie in The Croods. People wanted to stay in the cave, and that young girl, she wanted to go out and live again and deal with the challenges of living in a different world. Well, COVID is a new different world.
Its solution? Vaccines. Once 70 to 80% of Aussie adults are vaccinated, the PM says we can get out of the cave and do away with things like mass lockdowns. Something that's likely to help is that ATAGI has just approved the Pfizer vaccine for kids aged 12 to 15. Something these guys are pretty happy about.
Your age shouldn't have to determine whether you have the choice to keep people and yourself safe.
For the safety of us and others, I think we should be getting the vaccine.
The whole reopening Australia thing has been a bit controversial because while there are some obvious benefits, others are worried it'll risk more people getting really sick and spreading the virus.
I think this is a good idea as majority of Australia has been vaccinated.
People feel more free, but this may increase COVID-19 spreading.
Several countries, including Australia, have made some changes to their evacuation missions in Afghanistan after a terrorist attack at Kabul airport. At least 60 people have died in the attack, including 13 US soldiers, and 140 people have been injured. The government says the last Australian troops were pulled out of Kabul airport just before the attack. It's been helping Aussie citizens and some Afghan people flee Taliban rule, but that mission is now over because it says the situation's too dangerous. But the UK and the US say their evacuation missions will continue as planned. If you're feeling worried about some of the things you've seen in the news lately, make sure you talk to someone about it. That can be an adult you trust, and there's always Kids Helpline at 1800 55 1800. There's a big weekend of sport coming, but first, some awards from Kale.
Last night the AFL announced its All-Australian team for 2021. And sorry, there were no Adelaide Crows players.
Politics.
Right. Melbourne stole the show with 5 players picked in the AFL's Best 22, with ruckman Max Gawn named as the captain. There were also 11 first-time selections. The D's also snagged the Rising Star Award with Luke Jackson and the Coach's MVP with Clayton Oliver.
Clayton Oliver! What a start!
It'll give them a bit of confidence going into this week's final against Brisbane. While tonight's matchup between Port Adelaide and Geelong kicks off what should be a massive finals series. Speaking of finals, it's a battle of the bridge in the Super Netball Grand Final. The New South Wales Swifts will take on the Western Sydney Giants in this Saturday's decider. The game will be played in Brisbane, because, COVID. But it'll be the first time in at least 40 years that 2 Sydney teams have squared off in the final.
Now it's time for WWW. Weights, weigh-ins and whales. Not the internet. Starting off with the annual London Zoo weigh-in. It's that time of year again where every animal is coaxed onto a set of scales for research purposes and to make sure they're all doing fine. It's a big job. Zookeepers have at least 20,000 animals to get through. Now to Ukraine, where a group of 8 athletes are attempting to pull the world's largest plane ever known to man by brawn alone and, well, a bit of brain. And within 1 minute and 13 seconds, they managed to heave it forward 4.2 metres. And finally, to a giant from ancient times, 43 million years ago in fact. These fossils discovered in Egypt are believed to belong to a previously unknown 4-legged whale species. What? Whales used to have feet? Well, that's all the news we've got for you today. Have a great weekend, but before you get started with your weekend, why don't you hit subscribe?